Grace's video played across every screen on campus, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife through butter. My name is Grace Mwachukwu. I am the daughter of Professor Benedict Mwachukwu, Vice-Chancellor of Felicia University. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but every word is true. In the clinic, Hassan, Babatunde, and Uncle Dunladi watched on a phone screen as Grace revealed the horrifying truth. Felicia University wasn't just a money laundering operation, it was a sophisticated human trafficking ring disguised as a scholarship program. Every year, Grace's voice trembled, and brilliant students from specific family backgrounds are selected. They think they've won scholarships. Their parents believe they're being sent on exchange programs. But they're actually being trafficked. The VC lunged for Grace's computer, but she was faster. She'd already activated the dead man's switch. Even if he killed her now, the truth would still spread. Meanwhile, Chioma ran through the campus with Aisha's laptop clutched to her chest. Her cloths were soaked with rain and sweat, her heart pounding like talking drums at a chief's meeting. Behind her, she could hear Professor Babajid's heavy footsteps. "Give me that laptop, you small girl," he shouted. "You don't want to die young." But Chioma had seen what was on that laptop: files, records, photographs. 5 years of missing students, all of them scholarship recipients. All of them gone without a trace. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her and pulled her into a dark corridor. She almost screamed until she recognized Amara's face. "Quick, this way," Amara whispered, leading her through a maze of maintenance passages. The whole thing dawn cast now. Police dawn surround campus. In Dr. Folashaide's office, the professor faced her moment of truth. The VC stood before her, his mask of benevolent leadership finally stripped away. "You were part of this from the beginning, Doctor," he said softly. "Your signature is on every scholarship document. If we fall, you fall." She smiled sadly. "I know. That's why I've already confessed everything to the police." The sound of breaking glass made them both turn. Through the window, they could see police vehicles entering the campus from all gates. Back in the VC's guest house, Grace faced her father, tears streaming down her face. "You killed Mama because she found out, didn't you? When she discovered that her NGO was being used to identify potential victims. Your mother was weak," the VC spat. "Just like you. Do you know how many lives we've improved? Those children are living better lives abroad than they ever could in this godforsaken country. Living better lives." Grace's laugh was hollow. "As organ donors? As domestic slaves? As..." A gunshot rang out. But it wasn't the VC who had fired. Professor Babajid stood in the doorway, his gun smoking. "Nobody move," he commanded. "Grace, stop the broadcast." "It's too late, sir," she said calmly, even as blood spread across her father's expensive kaftan where the bullet had struck him. "Look outside." Through the window, they could see hundreds of phone lights in the darkness. Students had defied the lockdown order. They were surrounding the building, recording everything. In the clinic, Hassan had finally put the pieces together. "So that's why," he whispered. "My scholarship. The special medical checks. The mandatory blood tests every semester. They were profiling you," Babatunde confirmed. "Testing compatibility for..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Hassan's phone buzzed with a message from Aisha. "Baby, I'm sorry for everything. I was trying to protect you. I found out what they were planning for the scholarship students and I had to get close to Emeka to get proof." Across campus, chaos reigned. Police officers were breaking down doors. Students were sharing Grace's video on every social media platform. Security guards were either fleeing or surrendering. Chioma and Amara had made it to the campus radio station. With trembling hands, Chioma plugged in Aisha's laptop. "This is Felicia University Radio," she spoke into the microphone, her voice carrying across campus. We are about to play you the contents of these files. But first, everyone should know, Grace is alive. She's in the VC's guest house. And she needs our help. The night exploded with movement. Hundreds of students began marching toward the guest house, their phone lights creating a river of light in the darkness. Leading them was Emeka, who had broken free in the confusion and was now seeking redemption. In the guest house, the VC laughed despite his wound. You think this changes anything? We have people everywhere. In the government, in the police, in the... Not anymore, Grace cut him off, holding up her phone. Check your account, Daddy. While you were here threatening me, my other video was playing in the offices of CWD and Interpol. The one with the account details. The offshore transfers. Everything. Professor Babajid's hand trembled. You stupid girl. Do you know how many powerful people you've just exposed? Yes, came a voice from behind him. It was Babatunde, with Hassan and Uncle Dunladi beside him. That's exactly what she knows. The sound of breaking glass downstairs indicated that the police had entered the building. Professor Babajid raised his gun one last time, but multiple shots rang out. Uncle Dunladi's service pistol had been faster. As the professor fell, Grace ran to Babatunde, finally able to show her true feelings. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I couldn't tell you. They were watching everything. I had to make everyone be. He held her close. It's okay. I know. I've always known. Outside, the crowd of students had grown larger. Police lights flashed as country's biggest educational scandal began to unfold. Reporters were already arriving, drawn by the viral video and the unprecedented police presence. Hassan found Aisha in the crowd. Their eyes met, years of misunderstandings dissolving in an instant. You saved my life, he said simply. She touched his face gently. You saved mine first. The day you gave a random Hausa girl a chance. Chioma watched it all from the radio station window, her heart heavy with the weight of everything she'd learned. Amara stood beside her, their hands clasped tight. You go still continue for this school? Amara asked softly. Chioma looked at the chaos below, police leading away administrators in handcuffs, students hugging and crying, journalists setting up cameras, and in the middle of it all, Grace and Babatunde emerging from the guest house, their love having survived the darkest of conspiracies. Yes, she said firmly. Someone has to tell this story. Someone has to make sure it never happens again. As dawn broke over Felicia University, the rain finally stopped completely. But nothing would ever be the same. Because sometimes, love stories aren't just about romance. Sometimes they're about the love that makes people fight for justice, stand up for truth, and save each other from the darkest of fates. The morning after the scandal broke, Felicia University campus looked like a battlefield aftermath. Red and white police tape crisscrossed administrative buildings, news vans clogged the parking lots, and shell-shocked students wandered around, trying to process how their prestigious private university had turned out to be a front for international human trafficking. Chioma sat in her hostel room, scrolling through headlines on her phone. Education scandal rocks the country's elite university exposed as criminal enterprise. Felicia University VC, top management arrested in dawn raid, missing scholarship students, the dark truth behind the country's newest private university, Grace Nwachukwu, the VC's daughter who brought down an empire. My dear, you never chopped since yesterday. Amara entered with a steaming plate of yam and egg sauce. Person way fight evil empire need energy. But before Chioma could respond, her phone rang. It was Dr. Folashade, calling from police custody. My dear, the professor's voice was tired but determined. There's something else you need to know. Something about your own admission. Meanwhile, in the male hostel, Hassan was packing his things when Emeka appeared in his doorway. The two former friends stared at each other for a long moment. I came to say goodbye, Emeka said quietly. I'm turning myself in. Everything I did, working with them, trying to separate you and Aisha, the gun. His voice broke. They had my sister. They said if I didn't help them. Hassan's face softened. Come inside. Tell me everything. At the police station, Grace sat with Babatunde in the waiting area while investigators took her statement. Their hands were intertwined, neither willing to let go after everything they'd been through. You know what this means, right? She asked softly. About your father being on the board. Babatunde nodded grimly. He's been funding the whole operation through his construction companies. Those constant building projects on campus. All money laundering fronts. A commotion at the station entrance made them look up. Uncle Dunladi was being led in, handcuffed. Uncle. Grace stood up, shocked. But you helped us. The security chief's smile was sad. My Pekin, sometimes to catch a big fish, you have to swim with it first. 5 years I've been undercover for Interpol, gathering evidence. Your mother was my contact before they killed her. Back on campus, Aisha sat in the empty cafeteria, staring at her phone. Messages flooded her WhatsApp. Aisha, is it true? About the scholarship students? Babe, you're trending. Oh. Everyone is calling you and Grace heroes. My cousin was supposed to get Felicia University scholarship next year. You saved his life. Her fingers hovered over Hassan's chat. They hadn't properly talked since the shooting. How do you apologize for pretending to cheat on someone because you were trying to save their life? The cafeteria door creaked open. It was Chioma, her face ashen. Aisha. Dr. Folashade just told me something. About how they chose their targets. About my own family. Before she could continue, both their phones buzzed with breaking news. Mass grave discovered. Police find remains of missing students in the university construction site. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Because among the names of the identified bodies was someone they both knew, Chioma's elder sister, who had supposedly gotten a scholarship to study abroad 3 years ago. In the police station interview room, the VC finally broke his silence. You want to know why we chose certain families? He asked the investigators, his voice dripping with contempt. Because nobody would miss them. Poor families desperate for education. Mixed families with complicated backgrounds. Children of single mothers. We gave them hope, and in return. In return, you sold them, Grace finished, entering the room despite the officers' protests. Like common goods. Your own students. They were never students, her father shouted, his calm facade cracking. They were inventory. Do you know how much a healthy young organ goes for in out there? How much rich families will pay for domestic servants who can speak proper English? We weren't running a school, we were running a business. Grace placed a file on the table. No, Daddy. You were running a slaughterhouse. And here's proof that you killed Mama when she found out. At the campus gate, reporters surrounded Babatunde as he tried to leave. Mr. Babatunde, is it true your father's company built the mass grave? Did you know about the trafficking ring? Were you part of the scheme? He pushed through them, his mind spinning. Because he'd just received a message that changed everything. Son, if they arrest me, remember where the real money is hidden. Remember what I taught you about offshore accounts. In her hostel room, Chioma finally broke down in Amara's arms. My sister, all this time, we thought she was in out of the country. Amara held her friend tight, her own tears falling. Chi baby, listen. Your sister's death won't be in vain. Look what you helped expose. Look how many lives you saved. Their moment was interrupted by urgent knocking. It was Hassan and Emeka. They're burning the records. Hassan shouted. The administration building is on fire. Across campus, smoke rose into the sky as years of evidence went up in flames. But it was too late. Grace's dead man's switch had already released everything to the media. The truth couldn't be buried anymore. In the chaos, Dr. Folashade sat in her cell, writing furiously. Her confession would detail everything, every name, every transaction, every lost soul. She had been part of the machine, yes, but now she would help dismantle it. Her last line read, "To all the parents who trusted us with their children, I am sorry. To all the students we betrayed, I am sorry. But most of all, to the ones we lost. I am sorry we did not save you sooner." As night fell on Felicia University, the true scope of the horror was still unfolding. But amidst the darkness, small lights of hope flickered. Hassan and Aisha, reunited, planning how to help other scholarship students. Grace and Babatunde, their love stronger for having survived the storm. Emeka, choosing redemption over escape. And Chioma, turning her pain into purpose, that the international headlines hit like thunderclaps. Felicia University scandal exposes global trafficking network, foreign hospitals implicated in Felicia University organ trafficking ring, Interpol launches multinational task force, foreign diplomats recalled AS scholarship program revealed AS front. But for Chioma, the real earthquake came in a dusty evidence box from the police station. Her sister's diary, recovered from the mass grave site, told a story more horrifying than any headline. "They're moving us again tonight," read the final entry. "If anyone finds this, there are others. Look for the shipping containers at port." And Chioma, if you're reading this. I tried to come home, little sister. I tried. In the campus library, now transformed into a crisis center, Hassan and Aisha coordinated with international investigators. Student records spread across tables showed a pattern. Every scholarship recipient had vanished during semester breaks when the campus was empty. "Look at this," Aisha pointed to a ledger. The shipping dates match the university's cultural exchange programs. Hassan squeezed her hand. "We'll find them. The ones who are still." He couldn't finish the sentence. They both knew that for many families, there would only be bodies to bring home. Grace sat in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by photos she once thought told her whole story. Her father's trial was approaching, but it was her mother's voice that haunted her dreams. "Watch the flowers, Grace," her mother had said shortly before her death. I planted evidence like seeds. Now, examining her mother's beloved garden with new eyes, Grace discovered USB drives buried beneath the roses, each containing damning financial records. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Babatunde stood in the doorway, his face grave. "They found my father," he said quietly. "In a foreign country. But Grace. He's not alone. There are buyers. Important people. People who want this story buried along with our parents." Grace finished bitterly. In the male hostel, Emeka faced his own demons. His sister had been rescued from a diplomatic compound overseas, but her eyes held secrets she couldn't speak. He learned to recognize her nightmares by their names, places, faces, crimes that would never make it into official reports. Dr. Folashade's confession had opened floodgates. Every day brought new revelations. Companies linking Felicia University to trafficking networks in 3 continents. Diplomatic pouches used to transport false documents. Medical facilities that asked no questions about their organ donors. Offshore accounts flowing with blood money. For Chioma, the investigation became personal. Working with Uncle Dunladi's Interpol team, she traced her sister's last movements through a labyrinth of fake identities and forged visas. Each discovery was a knife to the heart, but she wouldn't stop. Not until every victim had a name, a story, and justice. Amara supported her friend the only way she knew how, by documenting everything. Her camera captured the aftermath, grieving families at the mass grave, students holding candlelight vigils, and international media swarming the campus. This is about more than Felicia University now, she told Chioma. This is about every missing child, every stolen dream, every parent who thought education would save their Pekin. But even as the case expanded, danger lurked. Hassan discovered his apartment had been broken into, and research files missing. Aisha received anonymous threats. Grace's mother's garden was vandalized, the roses uprooted. They're scared, Uncle Dunladi told them during a secret meeting. Powerful people are implicated in the evidence. People who think money can still bury the truth. In her cell, Dr. Folashade made a final decision. She would testify, not just about Felicia University, but about every connection, every conspirator, every crime she'd witnessed even if it would cost her life. Her food tasted bitter that night. By morning, she was dead. The news hit the group hard. But instead of silence, they chose voice. Grace used her platform to speak louder. Chioma wrote fiercer. Amara's photographs grew sharper. Hassan and Aisha's investigation dug deeper. Together, they built something stronger than fear, truth supported by love and justice fueled by memory. They gathered in their old classroom, now empty of students but full of purpose. For Sarah, Chioma whispered, touching her sister's photo. For every lost soul, Grace added. For the ones we can still save, Hassan and Aisha said together. And in the garden where Grace's mother had planted her final evidence, fresh roses began to bloom, red as truth, strong as justice, resilient as love. The morning of the first international tribunal dawned cold in The Hague. Grace adjusted her headscarf, a gift from Aisha, as cameras flashed outside the International Criminal Court. Behind her, Babatunde carried a heavy briefcase, 5 years of evidence about to shake the foundations of power across 3 continents. Ms. Nwachukwu, a prosecutor approached. We've received new threats against your life. Perhaps if we delayed your testimony. Grace's smile was steel. My mother didn't die for delays. Back in the country, Chioma sat in a secure safe house, watching the live stream with Hassan and Aisha. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Your sister wasn't the first. Check the 1998 student records. Look for the name Adelaide. That's my mother's name, Hassan whispered, his face draining of color. In a foreign country, Babatunde's father had begun talking. His prison journal arrived in a diplomatic pouch, each page more damning than the last. Names of buyers. Locations of other schools. Bank accounts. And most chillingly, a list of collaborators still walking free. Some of those names were uncomfortably familiar. No, Aisha breathed, recognizing one. Not my uncle. He's a federal minister. The evidence was irrefutable. Minister Babangida had been the political protection, ensuring visas were granted, investigations blocked, and questions silenced. His signature appeared on documents authorizing student transfers that were actually death sentences. Amara received a package from one of her photo sources in her flat overseas. Inside was a USB drive and a note, they're still operating. Different name, and the same game. A new university is opening in one of the states in the country next month. She immediately called Uncle Dunladi, but his phone was disconnected. When she tried his office, Interpol would only say he was unavailable for operational reasons. The trial testimony played out like a horror story. Medical professors describing how they taught anatomy using bodies of trafficked students, accountants explaining how scholarship funds were actually ransom payments. Diplomatic staff revealed how papers were forged, borders crossed, and parents identifying their children's belongings from mass graves, but it was Grace's testimony that broke the internet. This wasn't just a country crime, she told the court. Every missing student represented an international network of corruption. World-leading hospitals knew they were receiving trafficked organs. Foreign families were buying domestic workers with university degrees. Overseas doctors training staff in specialty procedures. The whole world feasted on our brightest youth. In the safe house, Chioma's investigation into Adelaide revealed an even older horror. Hassan's mother hadn't died in childbirth as he'd been told. She'd been a scholarship student herself, 25 years ago. Her disappearance had been the prototype for all that followed. They didn't start with Felicia University, Chioma realized. They just perfected their system there. Emeka, who had turned state's evidence, found himself facing both justice and redemption. His testimony about being forced to help the traffickers led investigators to 3 more universities across the continent. His sister began speaking too, naming names, revealing locations. But evil doesn't die quietly. First came the fire at the evidence storage facility. Then the cyber attacks on witness protection databases. 3 prosecutors received black roses. A key witness vanished hours before testimony. They're desperate, Babatunde told Grace during their nightly video call. The minister, the foreign doctors, the buyers, they're all facing life sentences if this succeeds. Grace touched her screen where his face glowed. Then we make sure it succeeds. Hassan and Aisha took the fight digital. They created an encrypted platform for survivors to share stories safely. Each testimony strengthened the case, each detail filled gaps in the investigation. But the biggest shock came from Dr. Foloshade's autopsy. The poison that killed her matched a rare compound found in Minister Babanjita's private pharmaceutical company. The same compound had been found in Grace's mother's garden soil. It was never just about trafficking, Grace realized. They were eliminating witnesses for decades. The team faced their greatest challenges. Grace received photos of herself in sniper crosshairs, Hassan discovered his father had been one of the original organizers, Aisha had to testify against her uncle, breaking family loyalty, Chioma found evidence linking the network.